Music of Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky, the lush and grand introduction to The Sleeping Beauty, the second of his three magnificent ballets. 3:29 in Winnipeg. My name is Simeon Rusnak. You're in the Diamond Lane, and The Sleeping Beauty is a jewel in the repertoire. It's celebrated by companies and audiences alike. This week, the Royal Winnipeg Ballet stages the marvelous work at the Centennial Concert Hall. To tell us more, I'm joined by Vanessa Lawson, Ballet-Master and a former principal dancer of the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. Hey, Vanessa.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. I just want to begin with the story of The Sleeping Beauty. I mean, this is it's a fairy tale. It's based on the Perrault tale of old, or I guess kind of more familiarly, the 1950s Disney cartoon is the one that comes to mind for me. How does the ballet differ from that story?
It's actually quite similar to the story. That you have the basic good and evil. The Princess Aurora is having her christening, and the fairies come to bestow their gifts on her. But the evil fairy Caraboss is not invited to the party, so he's quite upset and puts a curse on her, saying that she will prick her finger 16 years later and die. So it does follow very, very similar actually to the Disney story.
Well, so, I mean, it is a very relatable ballet that way.
Absolutely,
because you go in there with the story kind of in mind. What
Yes.
was your first experience with The Sleeping Beauty?
Well, actually, my first experience, as a child, I watched the Disney version, of course, as many young girls do, and then I saw the Royal Winnipeg Ballet perform it when I was a young child in Edmonton, and I just loved it. And then when I joined the company, actually, my first role, funny enough, was the role of the nurse.
Really?
So I was the one holding the baby in the prologue, and then I went on to do much more of the dancing parts in the acts after that. And then after that, I at quite a young age, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to perform Aurora, the lead. So that was one of the first lead roles that I did, and it was challenging and exciting and exhilarating all at the same time.
Well, can you tell us more about that lead role? I know from what I understand, it's a pretty challenging role to perform.
It is, absolutely. It's one of the hardest roles of any role for a ballerina classically, and it's the main reason why it's so hard, I found at least, is that there isn't it's so pure classically. You basically feel like you're being judged at every moment on your lines, on your beauty, on your grace, and there's so much difficult technique that is included in the choreography, as well as the stamina that you need to carry, a full ballet. The one thing that comes in particular to mind is the first act. There's a section called the Rose Adagio.
The Rose Adagio.
Yes, the famous
four
Rose
suitors?
Adagio. Yes, the four suitors that are trying to that are giving roses to Princess Aurora. And at the very end of this very, very difficult dance, she has to hold on to each prince, and they walk around her, and she's standing on her point shoe, which is only about an inch in diameter. She has to balance and then let go of one prince, and then the next prince comes and she puts her hands down again, and she does it 4 times. So the amount of balance and control that's required to do that is just unbelievable. And of course, you have thousands of people watching you, so
No pressure.
no pressure at all. So it's really quite terrifying, but just an amazing feeling when it's over and you've done it well.
In terms of the ballet, as you touched on just a moment ago, you said classically it's a very challenging ballet. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more that difference between classical ballet and perhaps other facets of it. Like, this is a classical ballet.
Yes, this is a pure classical ballet. Probably, this and Swan Lake and Nutcracker are really the purest of the classical ballet. And I guess a difference, I suppose, contemporary ballet or more neoclassical ballet uses a lot more of the body. It often not done in point shoes, sometimes in point shoes, but it doesn't have the same purity, the same sense of classical technique, of everything that you train in your ballet class or steps that you will be doing on stage in the classical ballet. But neoclassical sort of explores different movement and can be much more free in the body. So classical ballet, you have to be able to hold your torso, not rigid, but you have to be able to hold it and have the control in the torso to have the freedom also to move the head and things like this. So it is very challenging.
And this production of The Sleeping Beauty uses the original choreography as well, right?
It does, yes. It's been, the choreography has been restaged all over the world many times. So it's, but we do stick with as close as possible to the original Russian version that was done by Marius Petipa.
Yeah. In terms of it being a classic among classics, like you said, do you think that adds any sort of pressure, or does it just make it more fun?
Well, I think a little bit of both.
Yeah.
All of the dancers in the company love the challenge of it. They absolutely love it. And I was just talking to some of the dancers a couple of days ago, saying that it just rehearsing this ballet in general improves their technique, because the steps that they're doing and the repetition and the actual amount of technique that's required, really, I see a massive improvement in the company and in their classical technique as we go on in the rehearsal process. So the dancers love it. They find it challenging, but it's such a nice challenge for them.
That's outstanding. In terms of the company, like you mentioned, I mean, now taking a step back as a Ballet-Master, working towards a production that begins this Wednesday, what can audiences expect to see? How's the process been?
Well, it's a long process. We've been working on it for many months. It takes a lot of build up into it, especially for the lead characters. I started rehearsing there's three casts of Aurora, and I started rehearsing them 3 months ago. And then we've been doing it every day, and it's a big build up. You start slowly, and you first work the technique. It's a lot of stopping and starting and perfecting and making sure it's starting to come together, and then we start working on the stamina as the next thing to build, and all of the dancers in the company go through the same rehearsal process. So in the end, they're at their peak performance in terms of stamina, in terms of the technique of it. There's some very difficult corps de ballet work as well. So hours and hours go into working on that, in terms of making sure their lines are the same and making sure their technique is really perfect so they're all dancing together and they can create the images that you need. So it's a full ballet. It's a prologue plus 3 acts. So it's really a full, beautiful ballet with stunning costumes. That's a massive part of it. Stunning costumes and sets are really beautiful. So the image that you see on stage when the curtain opens is just absolutely beautiful. It's like you've opened up a storybook and you see this, fairy tale. I always think about one of those pop-up books as a child, and you open it up and it, everything comes alive. So it's really quite magical.
It brings a childlike wonder about the whole production.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I guess kind of as we heard just before the interview, we heard some of the music of Tchaikovsky. The last thing I want to ask you is about the score. As a dancer, how does it motivate you hearing the music?
Oh, that for me as a dancer, that was the main motivation. And especially you can really tell the ballets where the Tchaikovsky composed the score particularly exactly for this ballet. So every moment is done in combination with the choreographer, and you can really tell. I mean, all the nuances, all the different sections are so there. It's just at one. The movement is singing the song, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, they're really woven together.
They're really woven together, and that helps your technique, actually. If you're able to use the musicality and find nuances within the musicality, it really helps the technique and makes it so enjoyable to dance.
Well, Vanessa, I want to thank you so much for coming by the studio today. It was a real pleasure to hear about the Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and I hope that everybody gets a chance to go see the production.